Jake Trotter from ESPN talking about the news that the Browns will give defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz a second interview early next week.
I think he's a real contender, don't you guys think? I mean, I think it's a real possibility he ends up being the head coach. Ideally, you would like to bring in, a really sharp offensive mind, potentially as the head coach, and you keep Schwartz as the DC. But so I think it's a good move. I don't know if he's going to end up being the guy, but I think we're looking at right now, the way this is gone so far, it's either going to be Jim Schwartz as the head coach or one of these, 30-something hotshot young offensive minds, right? Kind of feels like either or. And in either scenario, you keep Jim Schwartz calling the defense.
Which technically Jim Schwartz is under contract for another year, so he could not leave unless the Browns allowed him to be a defensive coordinator. He could only leave if it's a promotion, which would be head coach. I like the idea of Jim Schwartz, and I think Jim Schwartz's personality as head coach drastically different than it would be as defensive coordinator. I think he would be a little bit in guys' faces when it called for it, because I've seen it before when he was a position coach here.
Yeah, listen, I've said if you told me I got a 60-40 Jim Schwartz over the field, and I think one of the things that happened to you with this coaching search was the Ravens job was not a job that was expected to come open. The Steelers job then came open unexpectedly. So you got two jobs with two premium positions and two premium teams, where one is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you know what their track record is. You know what they think about the Rooneys. You know what they feel about, the stability. They've had three coaches in like 70 years or something crazy. They got the Super Bowls, and they just run it a certain way. So there's a level of, if you're a coach, you're going to get a runway. If they believe in you, they bring you in. They're not going to be firing you after 1 year, 2 year. They're going to give you an opportunity to get things done. So that's one thing that you throw into the mix. The second thing you throw into the mix is the Baltimore Ravens, who, again, great organization, perennial. And the thing is, they got an MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson, who's won MVPs. And they got a team that they feel like if they tweak can be to a Super Bowl contender very quickly. So those two jobs kind of propelled you to the top of the list. Then you throw into the circumstances, the Giants job is a New York job. They feel like they got Jackson Dart. They got some pieces and parts. They got a higher draft pick. So you're going to have a pick, some things you can work with. Vegas has the number 1 overall pick. If you like Fernando Mendoza, that's another guy. Atlanta, with they have Pitts. They're going to have to make sure they figure out if they want to bring him back as a free agent. But he had a career year. You already know what you got in Drake London. You know what you got in Bijan Robinson. They got some pieces and parts. They don't know how you feel about Penix, but he's a former first-round pick. And Arthur Blank is known as a pretty good coach himself, playing in the city with a dome and warm weather. Miami, not the greatest situation at quarterback, but we know how the taxes go down there. It is Miami. It is Florida. It is a warm weather city. So you got a lot of teams that got some different things that are very, I think, marketable and are appealing. And what happened is you now have more open positions than viable candidates. Now that's why you see teams like the Ravens reaching out to Jim Schwartz to give him a type of interview. You got young hotshot quarterbacks, Nathan Shieldhouse and the young guy out of in Jacksonville. Don't really play calling experience, haven't called plays. At least Shieldhouse was a guy who has some extensive experience at Iowa State. He's a passing game coordinator with the Rams and McVay. That's appealing. But I do believe because there's more jobs available, I think the Browns went back and said, hey, we got to take a look at this thing because we may not. Shula, they requested an interview from Shula. Shula kind of turned them down like, he's taking 3 interviews this week for head coaching positions. So I think behind the scenes what happened was that there were some guys that they reached out to that declined and didn't show any interest in the job. And there's some guys that they brought in and they're like, we're not really sold on those guys. A lot of the young dudes, the pitchers, and some of these other guys, Dirty and guys they brought in, maybe they didn't like them as much. And then they had to pivot and fall back to Jim Schwartz and said, well, listen, we might want to get a second look at this because right now it's looking like our pool of candidates is drying up a little bit. We want to make sure at least we can get him in there, and then we can pivot to the offensive coordinator in the event that one of these young guys don't get a job, head coach's job, other places.